Close your eyes for a moment, my friends, and imagine that you are standing in Dubai at night. The air is still warm, even after sunset. Glass towers shine above you like bright knives of light. Cars move below in smooth rivers, and somewhere in the distance, music rises softly from a hotel terrace. You can smell perfume, coffee, and the faint dry breath of the desert beyond the city. Now lift your eyes higher. Above you stands the Burj Khalifa, so tall it seems to leave the earth behind. Around it, giant screens glow in blue and gold. Fountains leap into the air like dancing water. Thousands of people walk past in elegant clothes, speaking Arabic, English, Hindi, Russian, and many other languages. Some are tourists. Some are workers. Some are dreamers who came here with one suitcase and a promise they made to themselves. It feels modern. It feels rich. It feels almost unreal. And yet, my friends, here's the question that matters. How did the city rise from sand, salt water, and heat? Think about that for a moment. Because this place was not always a city of records, luxury, and impossible-looking towers. It was not always a place of airports, freeways, and indoor ski slopes in the desert. Once, this was a much smaller world, a rougher world, a quieter world, a world of wooden boats, a world of pearl divers, a world of pearl divers, a world of wind, hunger, trade, and patience. Let us go back, far back, into the mists of time. Are you ready to journey with me? Then let us begin. Long before Dubai became a name known around the world, this coast lived by older rules. The sea gave life, but only after great effort. The desert offered beauty, but very little mercy. Water was precious, shade was precious, food was precious. A single good decision could protect a family. A single bad season could break it. Imagine the land as it once was. No towers, no highways, no airport lights, only low settlements near the water, rough homes built from stone, mud, coral, and palm wood. The sun burns above everything. Sand drifts across the ground in restless waves. Along the coast, the water shines bright and flat under the morning sky. Wooden boats rest near the shore, and men with sun-dark skin prepare for another day of hard work. The future city is still invisible. But the story has already begun. My friends, this is one of history's deepest truths. Great cities rarely begin with greatness. They begin with survival. The land around Dubai was part of a larger Arabian world shaped by trade, tribe, and movement. People here understood something important very early. Even when the earth gives little, geography can still offer a chance. This coast sat near routes that connected the Gulf to Persia, India, East Africa, and beyond. Boats moved through these waters carrying goods, but also news, beliefs, language, and ambition. That mattered deeply, because a place does not need to be rich in fields or rivers to become important. Sometimes it only needs a good position, a safe anchoring point, and people who know how to turn difficulty into opportunity. And that is exactly what happened here. In the earliest forms of life on this coast, human beings learned to live between opposites, between sea and desert, between movement and waiting, between hope and danger. Fishermen went out before sunrise. Traders watched the tides. Families managed heat, thirst, and uncertainty. Nights were darker than we can easily imagine now, and the stars above the Gulf looked close enough to touch. Can you imagine that silence? No engines, no traffic, no elevators climbing through steel, only wind, waves, and the soft creak of wood. In that world, every object mattered. A rope mattered. A clay pot mattered. A skin of fresh water mattered. A date palm mattered. A boat mattered most of all, because the boat was more than transport. It was work. It was risk. It was survival. But here is the part most people never hear. Dubai did not rise because nature was kind to it. Dubai rose because people here learned to work with a hard world instead of waiting for an easy one. That difference changed everything. The settlement that would one day become Dubai grew slowly near the creek, that narrow stretch of water cutting into the land. Today, Dubai Creek may look modest beside the city's giant skyline, but in the old world, it was a gift. A sheltered channel, a meeting place, a practical door between land and sea. This was where trade could breathe. Picture a small trading settlement in the heat of the afternoon. The air smells of salt, fish, rope, and dust. Men unload sacks from boats. Someone is counting goods under a simple roof of woven palm. A child runs through a narrow lane. A woman lifts water carefully into a worn container. A trader from another shore steps onto land and listens to a language not fully his own. Around him, bargains are made with careful eyes and patient voices. Nothing here looks grand. And yet greatness often begins in places like this. Think about that for a moment. When people today speak about Dubai, they often speak about speed, fast growth, fast construction, fast money. But speed came much later. The first foundation of Dubai was not speed at all. It was endurance. Endurance in heat. Endurance in uncertainty. Endurance in the daily work of living where living was never simple. My friends, resilience is easy to admire when it shines from the top of a tower. It is harder to see when it lives in rough hands, tired backs, and silent sacrifice. But that quieter form is often the real one, the deeper one. Before there were investors and architects, there were people who simply refused to disappear. As centuries passed, the wider region changed around them. Empires rose and declined. Trade routes shifted. Faith shaped daily life and gave order to communities facing hardship. Islam became central to culture, law, identity, and rhythm. The call to prayer moved to settlements where people still worried about water, weather, and the uncertain moods of the sea. This matters because cities are never built only from money. They are built from habits, from trust, from memory, from what people believe life means. And on this coast, life meant effort tied closely to dignity. Family mattered. Tribe mattered. Reputation mattered. A promise carried weight. A relationship could open a trade route or close one. In such a world, survival was not only physical, it was social. It depended on being part of a web of loyalty and obligation. My friends, these are the invisible foundations of every great city. Archaeologists have found evidence that ancient communities lived in the wider region thousands of years ago. These people were not living in emptiness. They were part of networks, systems of connection, trade, and movement. Even in very early times, this coast belonged to a larger world. Think about that for a moment. When we imagine the ancient past, we often imagine isolation. But many early coastal societies were connected by water long before roads joined them by land. A boat could carry not only goods but ideas. And ideas often travel farther than armies. Imagine one of those early dwellings near the coast, a low structure under a white sky. A rough doorway. The smell of dry earth and salt air moving through the shade. Clay pots stand against a wall, their surfaces worn smooth by years of use. A woven mat lies on the floor. Outside, the heat presses down like a hand. Every object has a purpose. A pot stores water. A rope secures a boat. A knife cuts fish or dates. A roof gives a little mercy from the sun. My friends, this is where history becomes real, not in grand names, but in ordinary things touched every day. The sea was one of the great teachers of this region. It gave fish, shellfish, and routes of travel. It opened a road toward Persia, India, and East Africa. But it also demanded courage. A sudden storm could destroy a small vessel. A poor catch could leave a family hungry. A long voyage meant risk, absence, and uncertainty. Can you imagine watching the boat disappear into the bright distance, not knowing exactly when it would return? That was life here for many people. Waiting was part of survival. The desert taught a different lesson. It taught discipline. It taught limits. It taught the value of water with a force that people in wetter lands may never fully understand. A well was not just a useful place. It could mean life itself. An oasis was not just beautiful. It was precious beyond words. People here knew tides, winds, stars, and routes. They knew how to store what little they had. They knew how to read weather from the sky and sea. Survival in a harsh world requires knowledge, and knowledge passed quietly from one generation to the next. A father showing a son how to tie a lime. A mother teaching a child how to save water. An elder pointing at stars in a black sky and naming the path home. These are the hidden foundations of cities. By the 18th and early 19th centuries, the Gulf had become a region of growing political and commercial importance. In 1833, members of the Al Maktoum family established themselves in Dubai. That moment matters deeply because it gave Dubai a leadership line that would shape the city for generations. History is never made by one family alone, but leadership can create direction, and direction can transform a fragile settlement into something more durable. The place was still small, still vulnerable, still far from the modern city we know, but now there was a clearer center, a beginning of continuity, a sense that this settlement might not simply survive, but grow. Imagine the creek in those years. The sunlight flashes on shallow water. Dhows rest close together. Traders speak in low voices. Heat presses down on roofs and skin. Dates, fish, cloth, and other goods pass from hand to hand. The whole settlement is alive with small acts of effort. Nothing looks spectacular, yet beneath it all, the city is learning one of its oldest lessons. Connection is power. That lesson would return again and again through Dubai's history. Even in its earliest form, Dubai belonged to a world larger than itself. Goods came and went. Sailors carried news from distant coasts. Merchants compared prices, risks, and rumors. A small place, when connected to larger currents, begins to think differently about its own future. It starts to imagine more. And growth, in such a hard landscape, is never automatic. It must be chosen again and again. My friends, before we continue, let us stay with one phrase from this part of the story. You heard the expression, to turn difficulty into opportunity. This means to take a hard situation and find a way to use it for something good. We use it when someone does not give up, but instead finds a new path forward. You can use it today. For example, she lost her job, but she turned that difficulty into an opportunity to start her own business. Say that sentence out loud right now, if you can. Feel those words in your mouth. That is how language becomes yours. Not by reading alone, but by speaking. Now let us continue. Now, my friends, the story turns toward the sea. Not the sea of postcards and luxury yachts. We are entering an older seabower, one filled with labor, fear, hunger, and hope. A sea that glittered in the sun, but gave its treasures only to those willing to suffer for them. For generations across the Gulf, pearls were more than decoration. They were survival. They were status. They were trade. And for Dubai, pearls became one of the great forces that shaped daily life. Picture the shore before dawn. The sky is still gray. The air is cooler for one short, merciful moment. Along the water, wooden dhows wait in silence, tied close together. Ropes lie in neat coils. Men move with tired focus, speaking in low voices. A captain checks supplies. A diver rubs his hands and looks out at the dark line of the sea. Soon the heat will rise. Soon the long work will begin. And once the boats leave shore, there will be no comfort waiting out there. Think about that for a moment. This is where the story gets darker. Natural pearls formed inside oysters in the waters of the Gulf, and before the modern age, they were rare and precious. To find them, human beings had to go down into the sea with their own bodies. A diver would take a deep breath, drop quickly into the water with the help of a weight, search along the seabed, gather oysters into a bag, and rise again, before his lungs gave out. Then he would repeat the process many times in a single day. Can you imagine the pressure in the chest, the sting of salt in the eyes, the burning need for air, and then doing it all again? My friends, this was not romantic work. It was punishing work. A pearl boat was a floating world of discipline. Space was tight. Food was simple. Bodies were strained. Songs were sometimes used to hold rhythm or lift spirits, because work without rhythm can crush the mind as well as the body. Out there under the sun, a season could feel endless. And yet men returned to it year after year, because the pearl trade offered one of the few chances for serious income in a hard environment. A strong season could support families and keep trade moving through the settlement. A poor season, however, could pull people deeper into hardship. That is the cruel logic of fragile economies. When one thing becomes central, everything depends on it. But here is what most people never hear. The pearl economy was not simply a story of brave divers and beautiful objects. It was also a system of debt. Many divers needed money in advance before the season began. These advances helped feed families, but they also created obligation. If the catch was poor, the diver could remain trapped in debt. He worked, but the rewards did not always reach him in full. luxury and suffering have often traveled together. The object shines, but the labor behind it is often hidden in shadow. Imagine the settlement during pearling season. Some homes are quieter because so many men are away at sea. Women manage the household, children, food, and daily survival in great heat. Older people watch the horizon. The market still moves, but its pulse is shaped by the absent boats. News matters. Timing matters. The return of the fleet matters. Then, one day, sails appear. The boats come back heavy with oysters, hope, and uncertainty. Because here is the strange truth. Even after all that labor, success is not guaranteed. Oysters must still be opened. Pearls must still be found. Their quality must still be judged. A season of effort can still end in disappointment. Can you feel how narrow the line was between fortune and frustration? Then, in the early 20th century, the blow came. Cultured pearls from Japan flooded the market. The Great Depression reduced luxury spending around the world. Together, these two forces hit the Gulf pearling world with devastating force. For communities that had built their whole lives around one source of value, this was not a small setback. It was a deep wound. Men who had spent years diving found that the old system no longer promised survival. Families already living close to the edge were pushed harder still. The boats sat empty. The markets grew quiet. And for a moment, it seemed that Dubai might be forgotten by history. My friends, let us be honest with each other for a moment. This part of the story is not really about pearls. It is about what happens when we depend on just one thing. One job, one skill, one source of income, one person, one habit, and we never build anything else alongside it. Many of us are doing exactly that right now. We are waiting for one thing to keep working forever. We are telling ourselves it will be fine. The pearl divers did not choose to become vulnerable. But sometimes, my friends, we choose to stay that way. We wait until the old way collapses before we think about building something new. Think carefully about that tonight. When the pearl world began to collapse, Dubai stood at a dangerous edge. The sea had been the great provider for generations, even when it was cruel. But now that old light was fading. This is the moment when some places disappear from history. They do not vanish in a single dramatic day. They simply weaken, shrink, and lose their direction. A trade route changes. An old business dies. A younger generation leaves. Slowly, the place becomes smaller in the imagination of the world. Dubai could have followed that path, but that is not what happened. Think about that for a moment. A city is not only shaped by what it loses, it is shaped by what it chooses after the loss. Dubai did not have endless farmland. It did not have a great river. What it had was position, leadership, and a growing instinct for reinvention. That combination would prove more powerful than many people could see at the time. The creek remained central to everything. It may have looked modest to an outsider, just a narrow channel reaching into the land. But in practical terms, it was a lifeline. Boats could shelter there. Goods could move there. Traders could build routines around it. In a harsh environment, even a small natural advantage can become the foundation of a much larger future. Dubai understood that. History often celebrates grand moments, but the real turning points are sometimes practical and almost humble. A leader sees that a harbor must be improved. A trader sees that lower taxes can attract business. A town decides that openness is smarter than fear. These choices do not look glorious at first, yet they can reshape a place more deeply than one dramatic battle ever could. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Dubai had already begun building a reputation as a commercially attractive place. Merchants were drawn by trade conditions that allowed them more room to breathe. And once merchants arrive, they bring more than goods. They bring networks. They bring confidence. They bring movement. Imagine the creek during one of those working days. The sun sits high and white above the water. Dhows lean gently with the tide. Men call to one another as sacks are lifted from boat to shore. Somewhere a ledger is open on a wooden surface darkened by years of use. Dates, cloth, tea, spices, and other goods pass through the heat from one set of hands to another. There is no glamour in the scene. Only effort. Only trade. Only the steady pulse of a place learning its own value. By the middle of the 20th century, one figure became especially important: Sheikh Rashid bin Zayed Al Maktoum. He believed in growth through infrastructure. the physical systems that allow trade and daily life to function. Roads, ports, transport, basic services, these are the bones of modern growth. Without them, ambition remains only a dream. One of the clearest examples of his vision was the decision to dredge Dubai Creek to dig out the sand and mud to deepen the waterway so that larger vessels could use it more effectively. This may sound like a small engineering matter. In historical terms, it was enormous. A deeper creek meant stronger trade meant greater relevance. Greater relevance meant a stronger future. The chain is simple, but its consequences were profound. My friends, a skyscraper may impress the world, but a dredged creek can create the conditions that make the skyscraper possible many years later. But here is what most people never hear. Dubai's future was not born from sudden wealth. It was born from the decision to make itself useful again and again. That is why this period matters so much. The collapse of pearls did not leave Dubai with an obvious replacement. There was only the hard work of adjusting to a changed world, and adjustment requires a different kind of courage from survival. Survival says, get through today. Adjustment says, build a tomorrow that does not yet exist. Before we continue, let us stay with one word from this part: infrastructure. Infrastructure means the basic physical systems that allow a city or country to function: roads, ports, airports, electricity, and clean water. It comes from a Latin root meaning beneath the structure. It is the foundation underneath everything visible. You can use it today. Without strong infrastructure, a country cannot grow, no matter how talented its people are. Infrastructure is a useful word in professional English, in business, politics, and economics. Now we move forward. Then, my friends, the story reached one of its great turning points. And that turning point came from beneath the earth. When oil was discovered offshore in Dubai in 1966, it was an important breakthrough. At last, the emirate had a stronger source of revenue. Income for building roads, services, ports, housing, and the institutions needed for a more modern city. The feeling must have been electric. For a place that had endured the collapse of the pearl economy and the long difficulty of reinvention, oil was not just a resource. It was a door, opening. Imagine the atmosphere in those years. More vehicles appear on dusty roads. More plans are drawn in small offices near the creek. More officials and merchants speak about the future with a confidence that would have sounded too bold only a few years earlier. The old town remains visible, but the pressure of a new age is unmistakable. It is in the machinery. It is in the movement. It is in the eyes of people who sense that history is speeding up. Think about that for a moment. A city can struggle for generations in one rhythm and then suddenly feel time begin to move faster. But here is what most people never hear. Oil helped Dubai rise, yet the city was shaped just as much by the fact that it did not have endless oil. Compared with some of its neighbors, Dubai's reserves were limited. That limitation may have been one of the greatest gifts in its history. Because oil was valuable but not permanent, Dubai had strong reason to keep thinking beyond it. It could not simply relax into dependence. It had to use oil as a tool, not as a final answer. My friends, sometimes not having too much of one blessing saves you from one great mistake. In 1971, the United Arab Emirates was formed. Dubai became one of 7 emirates in this new federation. Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan became the founding president. This moment was historic. It gave the region a stronger framework of cooperation, stability, and shared statehood. For ordinary people, statehood is not only a flag or a title. It changes administration, security, services, and confidence. It changes what future seems possible. Political stability is one of the greatest hidden engines of economic growth. Investors may admire architecture, but first they look for order. Traders may enjoy opportunity, but first they need reliability. The formation of the UAE gave Dubai something that every rising place needs: a stronger sense that tomorrow could be planned. Port Rashid opened in the early 1970s. Later, Jebel Ali Port would become one of the largest man-made harbors in the world. A harbor is not merely a place where ships arrive. It is a promise made to global trade. It says, bring your cargo here. Build your route through us. Trust this place with your movement. Imagine the scene at a growing port. Cranes rise over the water like tall birds of metal. Containers stand in colored rows under a burning sky. The smell of fuel mixes with salt air. Engines hum with deep and constant sound. Workers guide cargo with practiced urgency. Ships arrive carrying goods from Asia, Europe, Africa, and beyond. Every movement says the same thing. The city is connecting itself to the arteries of the world. In the old days, a dhow in the creek carried survival. Now a modern port carried strategy. That transformation was profound. In 1985, Emirates Airline was founded. The leadership saw clearly that geography could become destiny if managed correctly. A city between Europe, Asia, and Africa could serve as a major transit point for passengers and cargo. Once, this coast depended on small boats in the creek. Now it was beginning to think in terms of global air routes crossing continents. That is the kind of leap that changes history. My friends, here is the difficult truth that this chapter offers us. Dubai had oil, but it did not let oil become an excuse to stop building. Many of us have something similar, a stable job, a comfortable salary, a safety net that feels good enough. And instead of using that stability to build something more, we use it as a reason to stay still. We tell ourselves, I have enough for now. I will start when I need to. I will build when I have more time. But later has a way of arriving too late. The question is not whether you have enough right now. The question is whether you are still building, even when you do not have to, even when comfort says, rest, even when fear says, why risk it? Think carefully about that tonight. By the 1980s and 1990s, my friends, Dubai was no longer simply trying to survive. It was trying to define itself before the world. The city understood something that many places miss. In the modern world, attention has value. A city that attracts attention can attract tourists, investors, companies, and talent. So Dubai did not only build infrastructure, it built identity. It built a reputation for speed, boldness, and scale. Dubai did not wait for history to name it important. It acted as if it could become important and then built accordingly. One of the strongest engines of this transformation was logistics, the organized movement of goods, people, and services. Jebel Ali Free Zone became a commercial area designed to attract international companies with favorable rules and easier business conditions. This was a brilliant move. It told global business that Dubai was open, flexible, and ready to work with the world. At the same time, aviation became one of the great tools of Dubai's future. Emirates Airline expanded its routes year by year. Dubai International Airport grew in importance. More travelers arrived. More businesses noticed. More routes connected. A layover became a hotel stay. A hotel stay became shopping. Shopping became tourism. Tourism became image. Image became investment. The cycle fed itself. My friends, the most powerful economic engine is not always one single industry. Sometimes it is the way several industries lock together and make each other stronger. Then came architecture that spoke louder than any advertisement. The Burj Al Arab, opened in 1999, was shaped like the sail of a dhow. It linked the city's maritime past to its luxurious future. This was not just a hotel. It was a statement. It said that Dubai could transform an old symbol of trade into an icon of modern prestige. Cities speak through stone, steel, and glass, and Dubai had begun to speak in a voice the world could not ignore. Malls became enormous indoor worlds, cool and polished, where the act of shopping felt like a kind of spectacle. In a climate where the outdoors could be punishing, these interiors became social theaters. The soft splash of fountains in places where, not long before, water itself had been precious beyond measure. That contrast is one of the reasons Dubai feels so cinematic. A city born in scarcity began creating spaces of abundance. But here is what most people never hear. Beneath this glamour, the older logic remained. Every dramatic project had an economic purpose. Dubai was not building extravagance for its own sake. It was building attraction. It was making itself unforgettable. And yet, to become unforgettable can also become a burden. When a city makes spectacle part of its economic model, it must keep producing spectacle. It must keep surprising the world. That creates pressure, a hunger for larger and bolder projects that can sometimes outrun caution. As Dubai grew, so did the number of foreign workers, professionals, managers, and entrepreneurs who came to live there. The city became intensely international. On one street, you could hear Arabic, English, Hindi, Urdu, Persian, Russian, and more. That diversity gave Dubai enormous energy, but it also raised difficult questions. Who truly belongs in a city built by so many hands? How does a place keep its own identity while welcoming the world? Think of the workers who built roads in extreme heat. Think of the cleaners moving through luxury spaces before sunrise. Think of drivers, engineers, nurses, builders, and cooks. Cities are sustained by ordinary labor repeated millions of times. Dubai's transformation was extraordinary, but it depended on strategy from above and sacrifice from below. History often remembers the towers, but cities are built by hands. Let us pause on one phrase from this part. You heard the cycle fed itself. This means a process that keeps growing on its own, where one result leads to another, which leads to another, and the whole thing becomes self-reinforcing. You can use it today. Once she started reading every morning, the cycle fed itself. Better focus led to better work, which gave her more confidence to keep going. Notice how the phrase shows a chain of causes. This structure, one cause leads to an effect, which becomes the next cause, is very useful in speaking and writing. It shows deep connected thinking. Now let us reach the final chapters. Then, my friends, the city met one of its hardest tests. For years, Dubai had been rising with astonishing speed. New towers climbed into the sky. Artificial islands stretched into the sea. Luxury hotels, vast malls, and ambitious real estate projects seemed to announce the same message again and again. The future is already here. Confidence became part of the city's atmosphere. Investors believed in growth. Visitors believed in the image. It was easy to think the movement would never slow, but history is rarely so kind. The global financial crisis of 2008 spread rapidly through the world economy. Credit tightened. Banks became more cautious. Property values fell in many places. Debt suddenly looked heavier. Projects that seemed unstoppable were now surrounded by doubt. Dubai, with its strong dependence on real estate, investment, and global financial confidence, felt the shock with unusual force. Construction sites that had once hummed with energy slowed or fell silent. Dust settled over unfinished towers. In offices that had recently felt full of certainty, voices grew quieter. Some investors hesitated. Some buyers disappeared. Some workers feared losing jobs. My friends, this is where the story gets darker. For a city that had presented itself as a symbol of unstoppable progress, the crisis struck at the level of identity as well as finance. It was not only about balance sheets or property prices. It was about belief. Could Dubai continue? Had it moved too fast? Had image outrun stability? Crisis reveals the true character of a place far more clearly than success does. When things are going well, almost every city appears confident. When money is flowing, optimism is easy. The real test comes when the current changes direction. That is when a place must decide whether it has only glamour or whether it has structure. Support from Abu Dhabi played a crucial role during this period. Financial assistance helped stabilize the situation. This also showed the practical strength of the UAE as a federation. Sometimes, resilience is not only the power to stand alone. Sometimes, it is the wisdom to endure within a larger framework of support. The city recalibrated. It adjusted its direction without losing its larger purpose. The Burj Khalifa opened in 2010, the tallest building on Earth. In another context, such a tower might have looked like pure celebration. In Dubai's context, it also looked like defiance. A city under pressure had still completed one of the boldest architectural projects in modern history. Can you imagine standing below it at night? Glass catching the last light. Steel vanishing upward into darkness. Water dancing in fountains below. It feels triumphant. Yet behind that image lies the memory of fear, hesitation, and uncertainty. That is what gives the tower its true meaning. Some monuments, my friends, are built from struggle as much as from wealth. As Dubai moved through the 2010s, it continued strengthening its global role. Emirates Airline and Dubai International Airport kept connecting the city to the world on a massive scale. Trade remained strong. Tourism regained momentum. Investors who had once felt uncertain began to see that the city still possessed something many places do not: strategic location, built infrastructure, international recognition, and a leadership culture deeply committed to adaptation. Then came Expo 2020 Dubai, held from 2021 into 2022. Nations gathered, pavilions rose, visitors arrived from across the globe. The city presented itself once more as a crossroads of ideas, innovation, and possibility. In many ways, Expo echoed the deepest themes of Dubai's history. Trade, exchange, image, ambition, and connection had always been at the center of the story. From pearl boats to global expos, from Crete trade to international air routes, from a small settlement under a hard sky to one of the most recognized urban names on Earth. Now imagine walking through Dubai today with this whole history in your mind. You pass through an older district where wind towers rise above narrow lanes and the smell of spices drifts through the air. Not far away, a metro train slides above the city with clean efficiency. At the airport, voices from every continent pass around you. At the creek, wooden dhows still move through the water. At the edge of the city, the desert still waits, silent and vast. The old and the new remain in conversation, and somehow, across all those centuries, this story found its way to you. And now, my friends, we arrive at the deepest part of the story. Not the tallest building, not the richest district, not the most famous view. We arrive at the meaning beneath all of it. So what is Dubai really? Is it a miracle in the desert, a triumph of trade and planning, a monument to ambition, or something more complicated, a place built from both brilliance and strain, from imagination and inequality, from old hardship and new desire? The answer, perhaps, is yes to all of it. The most fascinating places in history are rarely simple. They cannot be explained in one sentence because they carry too many truths at once. Dubai is admired, criticized, envied, studied, celebrated, and questioned, sometimes all at the same time. That is not a weakness in the story. It is part of what makes the story real. If we look only at the glittering surface, we miss the foundation. We miss the Crete before the skyline. We miss the dhow before the airport. We miss the diver before the import. We miss the rough hands that held together a fragile life near the water's edge. And without those older layers, the modern city becomes only an image. Beautiful perhaps, but empty of depth. But here is what most people never hear. Dubai is not remarkable only because it became rich. It is remarkable because it kept changing form without giving up its central instinct. Connect, adapt, and move forward. That instinct was there when the coast was still a hard and quiet place between desert and sea. It was there when pearling gave the settlement its first great economic rhythm. It was there when the pearl economy collapsed and forced the city to imagine another future. It was there when trade grew around the creek, when oil arrived but did not become the whole story, when ports and airports were built, when towers rose, when crisis struck, and when recovery came. Again and again, the city met the same test in different clothes. Can you survive change without losing direction? My friends, that is one of the hardest tests in life. Many people can survive one kind of hardship. Fewer can survive many kinds. And fewer still can turn hardship into a new form of strength. Dubai did not face only one challenge. It faced scarcity, collapse, competition, speed, debt, doubt, and the pressure of global attention. Its resilience was not formed in one glorious moment. It was formed through repetition, through adjustment, through refusing to let one ending become the final ending. This is why the theme of resilience matters so deeply here, not as a slogan, not as something printed in gold letters on a wall, but as a lived pattern across generations. The pearl diver knew it in his lungs. The trader knew it in his ledgers. The ruler knew it in hard decisions. The worker knew it in heat and fatigue. The city knew it every time history changed the rules. The brightest cities are not always born from comfort. Sometimes they are born from pressure, loss, memory, and will. Sometimes they rise because human beings, against all expectation, keep finding ways to shape the future with the materials history gives them. My friends, most lives are not made of giant moments. They are made of continuation, of getting up again, of adjusting, of building with what is available, of carrying memory forward without becoming trapped inside it. In that sense, Dubai is not only a city with a dramatic history. It is an extreme version of something many human beings know personally, the struggle to begin in one world and build another. You do not need perfect conditions to start building. You do not need an easy landscape. You do not need people to believe in your future before you do. What you need is patience, adaptability, courage, and the willingness to keep moving when one chapter ends. That is what the creek teaches. That is what the diver teaches. That is what the worker teaches. That is what the city teaches. Listen one last time to the sounds of this long story. The creak of a dhow at dawn. The rush of a diver entering the sea. The murmur of traders beside the creek. The grind of machinery at a growing port. The hum of an airport in the night. The whisper of air high above a city tower. Different ages, different worlds, and yet all part of the same long rhythm, a rhythm of effort, a rhythm of reinvention, a rhythm of refusing to stay small when history says you might. Glamour came last. Resilience came first. Tonight, before you sleep, I want you to do one small thing. Choose one sentence from this story that stayed in your mind. It can be short. It can be simple. Say it out loud, slowly, 3 times. Feel each word in your mouth. Do not just read it with your eyes. Speak it with your voice. This is how language becomes yours, not by understanding it alone, but by using it. Not by reading it silently, but by speaking it into the air. Not tomorrow, tonight. Until next time, my friends, sleep well.